Hello, this is David Baumeister, and I'm here to talk to you about Kant and the 1755 Lisbon earthquake. So on November 1st, 1755, a massive earthquake struck off the coast of Portugal. This caused enormous shaking. It's estimated today to have been over 8 on the Richter scale, and tsunamis related to the event were felt as far away as Morocco, Scotland, and the Caribbean. In Lisbon, though, and other cities along the Portuguese coast, this was especially devastating. So in Lisbon itself, it's estimated that tens of thousands of people died. The entire inner city, the old city, was wiped out, first due to shaking, then tidal waves, then fires. And apart from the event itself, aftershocks were felt intellectually across Europe and around the world in intellectual circles as thinkers attempted to explain what exactly had happened and how we should think about it. Not least among them was Immanuel Kant, who was 31 years old at the time and had earlier in 1755 published his first major book, Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens, in which he'd given a comprehensive account of the Earth and of the cosmos in Newtonian natural historical terms. So when the earthquake struck, Kant was well prepared to respond, which he did in 3 essays published early in 1756. So what did he say in these 3 essays? I'm going to break it down into 3 different points that he made. An empirical point, a theological point, and an anthropological point. So first of all, empirically, what did Kant say? Well, Kant speculated that earthquakes were caused by a buildup of flammable vapors in huge underground caverns, which at some points combust or those caverns collapse and fall in, and that exactly the collapse of a massive cavern near Lisbon is what had caused this earthquake. So that was Kant's theory of earthquakes at the time. He also associated earthquakes with mountain ranges, which is not incorrect. But nowadays, empirically, of course, we know that Kant was wrong about this. He didn't have a concept of plate tectonics, of course, and his view of the Earth as containing all these huge underground caverns is proven to be false. But Kant was ahead of his time in offering experimental and unique empirical theory, which he defended amongst other competitors at the time. So second, theologically. Related to this, Kant also held, along with Rousseau and Voltaire and other Enlightenment thinkers, that there were theological consequences to the earthquake, but not in the way that others may have thought. So many were pointing their fingers with the earthquake and saying, well, this shows the wrath of God, or there's a theological explanation. Earthquakes and other large natural disasters happen because they're part of God's plan, and there's a theological or divine reason behind them. Kant said, no, that's not the case. This is a purely natural phenomenon. It happens because the earth is set up in the way that it is. There's no divine retribution here, and we should understand the earthquake in those terms. So his theological point is really to put God slightly outside of the picture and to say that, no, we can explain this in purely physical terms, even though at the time it seems very mysterious what an earthquake is. Third, and related to these points, you can see how they build on each other, is Kant's anthropological thesis. And for me as a thinker and a Kant scholar, this is the most interesting aspect of what Kant does in these essays. And one of the reasons why we should turn back to them, even though Kant's empirical and theological views may seem a little outdated. His anthropological thesis is that human beings ought to live in a different way on the planet vis-a-vis and in relation to natural disasters and the natural world. Kant sees in the Lisbon earthquake a great example of how humans have perhaps hubristically constructed their cities in ways that are dangerous and in ways that are foolhardy. So Kant advises that in the future, residents around Lisbon ought not to build quite so close to the mountain ranges and to the coast, and knowing what we do about earthquakes occurring there. We ought to, as human beings generally on the planet, construct our cities in different places. We have to be mindful about the earth and its natural processes and adapt ourselves to them. Kant uses the word schicken. We need to adapt ourselves, schick ourselves to nature, not try to have it the other way around. Kant also makes some claims about how we should build our cities in more sustainable and earthquake-resistant ways. So he actually points to the indigenous peoples of Peru and says that they've done something well in terms of constructing their houses in a way that they're not going to be swept away by floods, say by being risen up on stilts. And he says that we in Europe I'm in Germany right now. We in Europe have a lot to learn in terms of what we would now call sustainable architecture and sustainable urban planning. So this anthropological thesis, it's also an environmental thesis, and it has to do with thinking about the place of humans in the natural world and our obligation for Kant to adapt ourselves to it. So that's Kant's essays on the Lisbon earthquake. I invite you all to read them. They're very short, they're underread, but they're very interesting. And it's great to see that for this very important event, which has huge historical implications and which we often associate with figures like Rousseau and Voltaire and many others, Kant also had a unique and very interesting contribution to make early in his life and early in his career. So thanks very much for listening, and have a great day.